Hello, my name's John Thorne and welcome back to Silverstone Shooting Centre and this our latest episode on practical mini rifle. Now we have done some kit and equipment features already, namely things on guns and also on ammunition, but this one's on something different. It's on bipods. Now there is a sector of the practical shooting world that considers bipods cheating, and to some extent, bear in mind we only shoot to 120 metres or so, I do get that. However, they're not. Therefore, it makes sense to take advantage of the rules and therefore be aware, or at least have some skill in using a gun when it's shot off a bipod. Now, at the same time with that, one might argue that even a micro target 100 metres could and should be shot offhand. Now, arguably, who cares? The bottom line, the rules allow it, therefore it should be something you should make use of if you can. Now, I'm quite fortunate with the Vector, I can actually mag rest, so I don't need a bipod. However, you still do the testing part of it, and also we thought we'd do some testing of the different kinds of bipods that are available, so make a useful piece for people to choose going further forward. Now, a couple things to consider. Most of our rules in practical mini rifle tend to come from practical rifle, where they shoot much longer distances, 300 metres. So from a bipod perspective, both a standing bipod, kneeling, and obviously a short bipod, I can see a greater value of shooting a target 300 metres away with a bipod. But we don't in mini rifle, so arguably whilst we follow their rules, it may be something we should probably just distance ourselves from to some extent. However, as part of that, I thought I'd do some testing. So what we have is we already stock and sell 3 different kinds of bipod here. A cheap budget, a mid-range worth looking at, and a hyper expensive, oh my god, it's the best in the world. And amazingly, I've got the latter fitted to my gun. But really it's a given idea of choice for people. Now the 3 we tested were the Caldwell bipod, also one from Magpul, which is an adjustable one from Magpul that's come out, and also one from Javelin, which is their Javelin Pro. Now they range in price from £40 for the Caldwell, £140 for the Magpul, and £285 for the Javelin. Now, one of the reasons we're doing this testing is that there's a method behind this, and what I thought I would do is do some testing both on the bipods themselves and also test the theory about different lengths of bipod. Now, there are different kinds of different bipods. There's standing and there's kneeling and also there's shorter bipods. Now, the only one on our test which was able to extend and run different setups for it was the Javelin. So I thought I'd do 2 tests. I did some testing just sitting with a bipod and how quickly it took to extend it, put it, place it and shoot on a prone position from standard bipod side. But also I did some testing against the clock on a kneeling and a prone and a standing version to see which was the best setup in terms of shooting, both in terms of accuracy and speed for different kinds of bipod length. Now the Javelin is quite a good bit of kit, as much as it comes with a set of short legs like this, but also you can buy different length of legs, have a kneeling version, and which also extends out to standing as well. So I thought I'd test all 3 and see which one worked. Now a couple of things we came to consideration. First of all, nothing is faster than basically imagine if a barricade right in front of you and leaning off it, okay? Arguably the kneeling bipod was close, but in terms of comparison, getting hold of something that's fixed in place that you can lean on straight away was the fastest and most accurate way of shooting, taking into account different versions. And then what we did was we tested that against kneeling bipod and against prone bipod. And the course of testing, I'll show you what we did. And what we tend to find was that the slowest way was going prone on the floor with a bipod. It was also the most accurate because you got the most stable shooting position, and at distance it obviously gave you better positioning. But it was so slow to get down there on a scoring basis, it pretty much came second to last each time. The middle one, which was probably the most interesting, was the kneeling position. Now that was with a extended bipod leg that only the Javelin had in the test we had, and that was where you moved to position and you knelt, used the bipod and shot accurately. That gave nearly as good accuracy as lying prone, but much faster. And then you had obviously finding a barricade to shoot against. Now again, this is different for guns. With a Vector I can mag rest, so it was faster and it was about the same accuracy as going for a kneeling, for a prone position or a kneeling, but it was faster. With a AR type platform, be it a Chris DMK or a Smith & Wesson, whatever, you can't mag rest. So you've got to go off the elbows, because when you mag rest, you tend to jam, tends to push the magazine forward and means around and strip off properly. So in the testing for those, we found that a kneeling bipod with a Javelin was faster. So what we did was test different versions, and I went against the clock and just looked at the timing, and I've got a system which allows me to try to enter different scores and make comparisons for it. And what was interesting for me was the kneeling bipod with the Javelin was the best combination all round, okay, so which is quite useful. But then it brings us down to the second issue of bipods. When you've got something little in the front of the gun like this, it doesn't really affect anything. It's not in the way, it's not doing any issues, etc. But when you've got a longer one where it's sticking down the bottom, it gets a little bit more awkward. And there was a few examples of people tripping over themselves on their own bipods because the load's sticking out, which is one of the reasons why I can't recommend the standing bipods. Two reasons. First of all was that they get in the way. And secondly, when you are shooting practical rifle or mini rifle, you're not sitting there getting a nice solid shooting position and aiming for a shot. You're normally traversing to a position, setting up and shooting. And what you found with the extra long bipods for standing was that it just got in the way and you weren't able to really get nice settled shooting positions very quickly. If you took your time, then great, but time was obviously not what we have to play with. The kneeling one was much faster because you could quite quickly get to one knee, get the bipod set up and shoot quite quickly, and again quite accurately. And again, prone was again the most accurate, but it was roughly twice as slow because obviously you're lying down, getting set up and going from there. So the ones that I was most interested in was the kneeling version. Now again, this comes down to bipod types, and again I'm afraid where the Javelin wins with its cost is its sheer range of features, which is why, fun enough, it's on my gun now. The first of all was it's quick release, okay? It's magnetic. So if I have a situation where I have a course of fire where I could use the kneeling bipod initially, I could literally drop the bipod and off I go, which is legal. You're allowed to do that course of fire. The Caldwell and also the Magpul, we had no choice. Granted, not only is it a short bipod, but it stayed on the gun. So let's alter that. The other thing that's quite useful about Javelin is it's two-way sided. One gives me tilt if I'm looking for traversing targets different heights, and one is fixed. So I'm looking for, if I have a target range where I've got literally several targets sitting at a certain point, it won't traverse. So I can get much more locked position looking at a target. If I have targets different heights, different distances, then what I want to do is obviously use the angle mount, and I can basically both traverse it both ways. So one gives more stability, one gives more flexibility in shooting. So in that regard, it's just very good. The last aspect where literally the Javelin did kill its competition quite heavily, other than its price, was the fact that A, is it very lightweight, therefore it doesn't really affect the handling of the gun at all. The Caldwell suffered from this because it was pretty heavy, but for 40 quid, what do you expect? And the Magpul was very good because they're very light again. But its main was its rigidity. It really was solid, with carbon fiber legs that are adjustable in height, along with end points that can either be spikes to go onto the ground for ground or rubber pads to go on a hard surface. It really did pretty much do everything I wanted it to do. Downside was it's £285. And that's plus legs. You want to get longer legs, 100 quid each. So you're looking at 500 quid's worth of bipod here. It's quick release, can fit on both rails and on M-lock versions, but generally it won because it just really was head and shoulders above everything else. But could you really justify £300 to £500 on a bipod? It's a tough one really, and I'll struggle. I have it, I bought one and we sell them here, but really I don't expect to sell very many because it's a very specific usage. However, if you want to compete at a high level and maximise chance of scoring, it's certainly recommended. But have a look at the testing side of it. It was quite interesting to see how fast you could actually get down one knee and shoot with a bipod that length, which is quite alien to me. It took me a while to learn it, whereas going prone, most people are aware of it. A couple of little tips of bipods as well. First of all, regulations allow you to take them on off the gun in between stages, okay? And during the course of the stage, you can drop them. So in the quick release side, this one is, you can drop them off. Otherwise, you can put them on, start the stage, take them off. Second thing was, obviously, they're all adjustable. Obviously, the Javelin's adjustable up and down in terms of length. The main thing to do is get your practice, get yourself sorted with your height, and make a mark on the leg where it needs to be. Last thing you want to do when you're being called for a course of fire is try and adjust your bipod to see whereabouts height it needs to be, taking it in different positions. Now what I do is I've made several marks on this. One is for lying prone, one is for off a table or a bench, and one is for high up. So I know which one to do before I start the course of fire, so I'm set up and done. So that's worth doing. That's about it really. It's one of those ones where if you want to spend the money to use it, it's recommended. Is it going to make a difference between first and 10th? No. Is it going to really improve your shooting longer distance? Yes, it will. but so much of it will be coursified or orientated. I try and make coursify here so they're not dependent on equipment, but there are various examples, longer distance stuff, where having a bipod will make a difference. So will not having to go prone make a difference, either finding a barrier to shoot off, which is what most people tend to do, or a kneeling bipod. Hope that was useful. Slightly different. We're quite impressed with the kit, but like I said, you can buy them anywhere. There'll be links to where you can get them from, both from us and other people, for all three options, either the Caldwell, the Magpul, or the Javelin. But I hope it's useful for you. Any comments, of course, please do ask, and ditto subscribe if you can. All right, thanks for that. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon. Cheers.